Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of an introduction to agent-based modeling. So hopefully by this time, everyone has gotten up to speed on the actual, found the videos, started working through them. Ideally, by this time, you've done the participant survey. And at the end of this week, by the end of this week, which I guess is tomorrow, you'll hopefully have done the project questionnaire as well. So it's still we're still in Unit 1 at this point, but the Unit 2 videos have already been posted. So hopefully we'll start working through that on Monday. I have to apologize a little bit. You might hear some noise in the background. I'm not doing this from my normal office, but instead I'm actually in Munster, Germany at a agent-based modeling workshop where I just gave a talk a couple hours ago. And so they're just got the windows open because it's kind of warm here right now, and so there's you might hear the noise of the church bells and things like that going off in the distance. Hopefully it won't be too distracting. Looks like the microphone's still getting a pretty good read. Hopefully it won't be a problem. Anyways, and hopefully the internet connection is good enough. I just noticed that it looks like it's pausing a little bit here and there. But if nothing else, if you get frustrated with watching it live, you can always wait till I'm done, and then the fully taped version will be up online, and that will spool hopefully a little bit better and flow a little bit easier. Just said I went offline, which I didn't think I did. Anyways, we'll get this done one way or another. It may not be the best live stream performance yet. If you do have any questions, again, I'd always like to make an announcement at the beginning of the hour that if you have any questions, you can type them into the YouTube chat window. You can also tweet them at Intro to ABM. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. If you want to ask questions beforehand, you can always email at abm@complexity-explorer.org or post them to the discussion forum. Either I or Chatika will look them up and try and answer them during this office hour. I do have a couple of questions I've collected from the last week, and hopefully that will work. Chatika is already just emailing me that I forgot to post the link online. I'll post it right now so that everyone can see it on the discussion forum, so that if you want to, you can join in. Let me do that real quickly. And I'll also tweet it out too at the same time. Obviously, if you're watching this, you don't need it, but for those people who are not watching it, they might need it to look at. So, just write office hours happening now at youtube.com/BillRand/live. Okay. We'll post that on the forum and we'll be good to go. Okay. Now there's some drums playing in the background too as well. Always interesting. Office hours, week 2, starting now. Okay. Let's see how well this goes. Hopefully there'll still be some video eventually. Oh, thanks. Someone actually commented already that the internet connection is pausing a lot. Yeah, sorry about that. Not much I can do. It is edgy realm, so it should be decent. But apparently, maybe because I'm farther away from where I normally broadcast from, YouTube is having some troubles keeping up with me. Like I said, if there's a problem, feel free to wait until after the hour is done, and then you should be able to view the office hours without having all those pauses, because it'll encode it and upload it. Okay, so let's get into the details. But of course, as I mentioned, it's the second half of Unit 1. So, hopefully you've already done the the participant survey. The big kind of homework assignment for this week is the project questionnaire. The project questionnaire, basically the idea is that you should be able to kind of fill through and start looking at what you're planning to do for your actual project itself, right? And hopefully there are some questions in there that will help you kind of think through the aspects of how you're going to build your project up, right? And this is just to kind of get you started on starting to think about what your project should look like, what it's going to be made of, what the components of that project are going to be, so that we can start to explain it. And this is just a first kind of example to kind of get you working on it. In a couple of weeks, we'll actually have a peer-reviewed assignment where you go through a full design of the project and kind of explain it. But this is a way to start thinking about it. And one question, by the way, one comment, I almost always get someone when we start to go through the full project design later on who has forgotten to save the answers to their project questionnaire. So as you're filling it out, I would highly recommend saving those answers so that you have the ability to use that project questionnaire answers as the basis for what you do later, right? Okay. So those are the goals for this week. Next week we'll start Unit 2. One small note in respect to Unit 1 and Unit 2 is that Unit 1 is available to everyone for free all the when we start the course. If you want to continue on with the course, you do need to pay the $50, I think it's the registration fee right now, to get the rest of the course, and you can do that through the Complexity Explorer website. But there are scholarships available for those of you who can't pay. There are details about how to apply for those scholarships up online. I don't give them out. It's more of something that happens directly through Complexity Explorer, so you'll have to reach out to them to help out. And finally, I want to express that, of course, all the materials are always available for self-study after the course is completed. So if you want to wait until after the course, the downside to that is you don't get the peer review, you don't get the feedback on your projects, you don't get the live interaction of working with me or Chatika in the forums and on YouTube, etc. So that's the downside to working on it later. Now, one other comment I should make about that real quick is if you have questions regarding payments of the course, regarding the certificate, regarding any of those things, I can sometimes answer them, but a lot of times I can't. So if you have questions about those things, I highly recommend emailing admin@complexityexplorer.org as opposed to abm@complexityexplorer.org. So admin is a number of different people, Julia and Lyndon, who work with the Complexity Explorer project to make sure that the Complexity Explorer is continuing to work, that the interface is working, that the payments are getting processed, everything like that. So admin@complexityexplorer.org is the email to email if you have any questions about the administration of the course. If you have questions about ABM in particular, if you have questions about the ABM course in particular, things along those lines, then please email abm@complexityexplorer.org. Just a small little note. Along those lines and related to the admin, one of the things that we love to do is to get subtitles up about all the videos, right? And some of those are up already. We had some small issues with some of them where they weren't showing up correctly, or the Polish versions were showing up for the English versions and stuff like that. We think we've worked all that out at this point. But the important point is that new videos are going to go up, and not all of them are going to have subtitles already. So there is a way you can volunteer to participate, to help do subtitles in whatever your native language is on the Complexity Explorer website, so that we can make these videos available to as many people as possible, right? So that's my big administration topics for today. Unit 1 is what you should be finishing. Unit 2 starting tomorrow. Don't forget to pay for the course if you want to continue on with Unit 2. Emailing admin for any back-end issues with the course, ABM for any main issues with the course, etc. All those things are kind of the main issues I want to talk about today. Now, let's go through some of the questions with regards to content. There's been some great continuing discussion about multi-agent systems versus agent-based modeling on the forums. The only comment I wanted to throw out there is just that, like a lot of things where people put the word versus in, one versus this, these are not strict dichotomies, right? So there is a lot of techniques and methods that are shared between both multi-agent systems and agent-based modeling. So just a small note, I think a lot of the discussion has been very good, but just one small note of clarification is that, things aren't necessarily only multi-agent systems or only agent-based modeling. They could be a mixture of them, right? There are also some questions about the subtitles. As I mentioned, I think we fixed most of those. The next question I got was someone who couldn't join the first office hours, and they were saying they were having trouble getting NetLogo on their system because of some organizational restrictions that they had. And I just want to briefly mention, and I think I mentioned this a little bit in the last office hours, NetLogo Web is available, and NetLogo Web will work for, I would guess, about 80% of the course, right? But after that, you're going to run into some issues. There's definitely some stuff we do with extensions in the later ends of the course. There's stuff we do with graphics files and reading in files later on in the course, and all of that will be difficult to do in NetLogo Web, right? If not impossible in some cases. So feel free to use NetLogo Web, but really you're going to need NetLogo itself to get the full experience of the course. Yeah, and the same user also asked a question about, same student also asked a question about the fact that they're not allowed to use R at work. Could you use Excel, Spotfire, or SAS, or any of the commercial products? First of all, I find it weird that, I won't mention where this person works, but that they don't allow you to use R when R is becoming, quite frankly, the de facto data science software package out there. But anyways, that aside, yes, you can do most of the statistical analysis we're going to talk about in this course, and if not all. In fact, you can do all of it in Excel and SAS for sure. You might be able to do it all in Spotfire. I know a little bit of Spotfire, but not enough to say that you can do everything that we do in Spotfire. The only problem you're going to run into is obviously that my course, my videos are all talking about R, so you're going to have to figure out how to translate from what I discuss in R to Excel or SAS, right? So those are possibilities. You also don't, in order to actually complete the project, you don't actually have to use R or Excel or anything like those. So you could do this entire class without using them. But if you want to follow along and try to do some of the assignments at home that I talk about in the class, then you aren't going to need R and NetLogo together. Okay. Some other questions that have come up in the forum have included, when should agents be heterogeneous versus homogeneous? And this is an interesting question, and there wasn't a lot of context, at least in the version I was looking at. But that's a tough question to answer, and it's one that we will attempt to answer as we go through this course. I think what the user really means is, when should agents have heterogeneous rules versus homogeneous rules, right? Because agents are almost always heterogeneous, right? Like even in the Schelling model, where they all use the same rules of behavior, I would still call the agents heterogeneous because they are in different parts of the world. They have neighborhoods that are slightly different than each other. However, the rule sets and the rules of behavior that they're using are homogeneous, right? I think the big thing that would help you differentiate when it's necessary to make your agent, I think first of all you should make your agents as simple as possible, whenever possible. So that would imply making them homogeneous as much as possible in terms of the rule sets. However, I think that they should be heterogeneous if the differences in the rule sets between two groups within the system are such that they're likely to result in very different behavior, right? So in the Schelling model, if you remember, the tipping model, right, that we talked about, there's this rule that says that if 3/8 of my neighbors are like me, then I'm okay where I am, right? Now, if it turned out there was a big distribution over that, where some people wanted 3/8, some people wanted 5/8, some people wanted 7/8, right? Then it seems like maybe you would use a heterogeneous population as opposed to a homogeneous population. But in this particular case, that doesn't seem to be the way the system actually works. And so as a result, it's okay to use homogeneous rules in homogeneous populations, right? Okay. So the next question is actually related to the tipping model. It's that they wanted some confirmation about how the tipping model works. There were a couple questions. For each person, are there 8 neighbors? And yes, the answer is yes. But let's pull up. I like when I get these kind of questions, I like to pull up the actual model and show you what is in the model that helps me answer these questions. So give me a split second while I pull up the model. Let me add in the window for it. Seems like the video has gotten a little bit better. Hopefully that's the case. Okay, almost there. Hold on a second. Still loading right now. Sometimes it takes a while when I'm running the video streamer as well. So let me pull up the segregation model. Okay. I'm trying to find it for some reason. Oh, maybe it's because, hold on a second, I think I know what it is. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So here you go. So here is the NetLogo segregation model. Let me turn off my background. So there were kind of two questions that were discussed here. One is does the agent look at its 8 neighbors? So let's look at the code real quick. I'll blow this up for you a little bit so you can see a little bit. And if you look down at the code, it says similar nearby equals count turtles on neighbors with color equals color myself. Another nearby equals count turtles on tables with color does not equal color to myself. And then the total nearby is a similar nearby plus the other nearby, right? So is this on 8 neighbors? Well, first of all, so the question is turtle on neighbors? Well, it turns out if you go up, so the easiest way I would check this is I'd go to the NetLogo dictionary. And if I go to the NetLogo, and you can do this actually directly from NetLogo by highlighting the word and then going up to help and then saying look up in dictionary. And in fact, you can just hit an F1 key on the PC, or I think it's like the command F1 on the Mac. And sure enough, once you do that, it will pop up a window with the definitions in it. Okay, so let me pull it up here. There we go. Okay. So there you go. You can see. You can't see it super well. Let me blow it up a little bit for you. Right. So there's the definition of neighbors. So neighbors reports an agent set containing the 4 surrounding neighbors patches when it's neighbors, or 8 surrounding neighbors when it's neighbors, or 4 surrounding neighbors when it's neighbors 4. And in fact, if you look back at our original code, it is neighbors, so it is the 8 neighbors. Right? Now the question is, so the next part of the question was, does it count it only among? Let's see, how is it worded? It doesn't count the empty neighbors. The answer to that is actually no. So if you look at the code, it says count turtles on neighbors with color equals myself, and the other nearby is count turtles on neighbors with color not equal to color myself. So it's only counting turtles, right? So if in fact there are 5, you're only surrounded by 5 turtles, then it's only counting the 5 turtles. It's not counting the 3 empty spaces because it only counts turtles on neighbors, not total number of neighbors. So the answer is no, it does not count the empty neighbors as part of the calculation. So what this means is that a user who is at the very edge of a block of individuals is more sensitive to changes in their neighborhood density than individuals in the very middle. Okay, great question, by the way. Looks like, hold on one second, looks like there was a comment that came in. What is the key thing? What is the key thing that I can use to identify that a particular agent-based model was developed used a spatial or network environment? Oh, okay. So I think I understand this. So this question from Farida, thank you Farida for the question. I think the question is asking, can I look at a model and determine how it was developed, right? And I think the answer is that this is not something that's like obvious, but if it is a network-based environment, usually you'll see links. So let me just show you real quick. So I'm going to pull up the preferential attachment model. It's just kind of a standard network-based model. And let me show it to you. So if I switch over, we'll capture one. Is it? No, two. Okay. If I switch over to this window, right, it's not super. Let me do something. Ask set size. Set its thickness. Right. So I just set the link thickness to 2, so it's a little bigger, so it makes it easier to see. But you can now see, in fact, maybe that's too big. You could probably put it back to 1. Right, so now you can see the links connecting all the network nodes. So if you're trying to determine if an agent-based model is using a network-based or spatial structure-based, this is a good way to do it, right? So you can tell from here who is connected to whom in this space, right? On the other hand, if it's spatial, a lot of times they will be taking into account the actual physical location they're in. So another way you can look at it is look at the code, right? In the code for this preferential attachment model, you'll see there's a lot of references to links. There's not a lot of references to moving around the space or setting their coordinates or anything like that. So I think that's the primary way that you can identify whether an agent-based model is using a spatial or a network environment. So there was another question about. There's another question that came up about the relationship between agent-based modeling rules and partial differential equations. So in Uri's introduction, around the 14-minute mark, Uri said that the partial differential equations can be represented by simple codes. What does this mean? And does this mean that simple ABM can generate rules similar to PDEs? Well, so I think one thing Uri's talking about here is that in fact there's this notion of something called Turing completeness. And Turing completeness is the idea that if a language is powerful enough, then it can express the same thing that any other language can, right? Because of the fact that essentially Turing showed that once you get an algorithm or a method that can reproduce itself, right, then it can do as much as any other method can do. And so I think partially what Uri is alluding to here is the fact that PDEs and agent-based models, we know that they both can be used to describe the same system. It's just a matter, because they're both quote-unquote Turing complete, but it's just a matter of which model and which approach is better represented for the situation at hand. Does this mean that a PDE can be written easily and simply for an agent-based model? And the answer to that is no, not necessarily. All Uri is saying is that it is possible to write out the PDE as a set of simple equations that can be incorporated into something like an agent-based model or something along those lines, right? Finally, the questioner asked, does this mean that simple ABM rules generate solutions to PDEs? Yeah, you know, it's at least possible that a simple rule could generate the same rules as, sorry, let me take a step back. It's at least possible that you could write a set of simple ABM rules that generate the same solutions as a PDE. It's completely possible. I often don't like to think of it in that context because I like to think of agent-based modeling as its own thing, potentially separate from PDEs. So I don't like to think about like how would the agent-based model be written in a set of PDEs, right? I like to think instead about how well does this agent-based model represent reality and what does it tell me about the world around me. So those are the major questions that have come up. If there are any other questions, please let me know. Yeah, I'll try and stay on top of it as I see the chat questions rolling in. You have a couple other comments I want to make. In the Unit 2, we're going to start talking about the Documentation tab. And I don't discuss it there, but later on in the course, I do also discuss alternative methods for document an agent-based model. Traditionally, one of the most common methods has been something called the ODD, or Overview, Design, and Details protocol, which tells you how to describe an ABM such that it could be replicated again in the future. So there are other methods out there. I just want to say that the NetLogo info tab is one particular approach to documenting an ABM. But there are a lot of other approaches out there that might also give you fairly good, and in some cases maybe more reproducible than the NetLogo info tab. Another question that came in, is there a standard to follow to choose good dimensions that the NetLogo world should use in your NetLogo model? So we go back to the model again, right? So this is the preferential attachment model, right? How do we determine the size of this world, the size of this dimension right here? Well, essentially, the way that was done, right, was just kind of setting it arbitrarily. But if you were going to actually do this on a regular basis, right, or it was very specific to it, you might want to test to see what the sensitivity of the model is. Quite frankly, I find personally that many times the that the size of the world isn't hugely dependent upon the model results, or the model. Let me put that differently. The model results are not largely dependent upon the size of the world. So that's kind of a way to start to think about this, right? That it doesn't really matter, and if it does, that's potentially problematic for your model, right? Now, in networking models, that's specifically true, right? That the size of the model is not terribly important. In spatial models, which we talked about a little bit, it is possible that you need to have the right scale of the model, right? And that becomes a little trickier. But in reality, I would probably leave the model default. Oh, I still have the window on. Sorry. I would probably leave the model default alone a lot of times. Finally, where can I find a comprehensive list of different commands that are introduced throughout the videos? So as much as possible, I try and document at the bottom of the videos some additional resources. But you can always go to the NetLogo user dictionary. So let me show you that real quick. So if I go back to the model, right? If you go up to the top, you can go to help, and then there's NetLogo dictionary. That's not going to show up, but what I'm about to show you hopefully will show up. Yeah. So what will show up is something that looks like this, right? And you can also just go to Google and type in NetLogo dictionary. And if you want to find all the commands that are introduced in the lecture, they're all here somewhere or another. And they're organized kind of alphabetically, but also by category. So turtle, patches, links, etc. Right? So feel free to scan down there and find whatever question you want, or find whatever command you want. And then when you click on it, right, it'll give you a lot more details about the question, about the command, and also show you other commands that are related to it. So I think that's all I have for the class this week. If there are other questions, let me know. Okay. If there are other questions, let me know. Feel free to email them or send them in. Next week, I'll be back in the U.S., so hopefully the connection will be a little better. It sounds like it got better as time went on today. Yeah, but hopefully it all goes smoothly. Oh! Okay, never mind. I see that. Never mind. Those are all good. Okay, I thought I had another question, but they're actually old. They're from last year, so I won't bother talking about those today. But anyways, feel free to kind of keep working through Unit 1, wrap that up, make sure and submit the project questionnaire. It's not only going to be helpful for you in thinking it through, it's going to be helpful for us in trying to figure out what people are looking at within the projects, right? So try and get that submitted in, and then go ahead and start on Unit 2. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email abm@complexexplorer.org or tweet at intro to ABM. Let me double check the Twitter feed real quick, just see there's nothing else coming in. I look forward to seeing you all, or to talking to you all in about a week. Okay, thanks everyone. Take care.